I was 21 years old at the time, and I had been camping for most of my life. This trip felt normal in every way. It was a public campground in the Midwest, the kind families use every summer. The only strange thing was the feeling that someone knew we were there before we arrived. I had driven out with one friend on a Friday afternoon after work. We both needed a break, and camping was cheap and familiar. The campground sat near a lake surrounded by trees, with marked sites and gravel roads running between them. There was a small sign at the entrance listing quiet hours and emergency numbers. Nothing about it stood out. We checked in at the self-service station, filled out the slip, and hung it on the post. Other campers were already there. A couple of tents. One RV. A pickup truck parked near the far edge of the grounds. Everything looked normal. The weather was clear. No wind.
No storm forecast.
The kind of calm night campers hope for. We set up our tent, started a fire, and cooked dinner. As the sun went down, the campground slowly got quieter. People retreated into tents and vehicles. By 9 p.m., it felt like we were almost alone, except for the soft sounds of the forest. That's when I noticed something small that didn't sit right with me. Every time I stood up or moved closer to the trees, I felt watched. Not in a dramatic way. Just a steady pressure, like eyes on my back. I told myself it was nothing. Camping always messes with your senses at night. A little later, I realized something else.
There were no insects. No crickets.
No frogs near the lake. Nothing. The forest was too quiet, even for that time of night. I mentioned it to my friend, and he shrugged. He said maybe it was just the season. Then I heard a single footstep. It came from behind us near the tree line. One step. Slow and careful. It didn't sound like an animal. It sounded like a person shifting their weight. I turned around and shined my flashlight. The beam hit tree trunks, bushes, and darkness. No movement. No sound. I waited for another step. It never came. I told myself it was another camper walking back to their site. That explanation made sense, so I accepted it. We put more wood on the fire and kept talking. But after that moment, I couldn't relax. I kept checking the edge of the campsite. I kept listening. And even though nothing else happened right away, the feeling didn't leave. Something about that place felt wrong, and I didn't know yet that the night was only getting started. The campground was part of a state park about 3 hours from where I lived. It sat near a wide lake with a walking trail that looped around it. The sites were spread out but still visible from one another. Each one had a fire ring, a picnic table, and a wooden post with a number on it. There were bathrooms near the entrance and a small ranger office that closed at sunset. It was late summer, warm during the day and cool at night. The sky stayed clear, and the air smelled like pine and dirt. As the light faded, the trees turned into dark shapes, but the moon gave enough light to see the road and nearby camps. I was there because I needed a break. Work had been stressful, and I had been picking up extra shifts. Camping was something I grew up doing, and it usually helped me reset. My friend Mark felt the same way. We had known each other since high school and had camped together before. Neither of us were nervous about being outdoors. We planned a simple weekend. Arrive Friday evening. Stay 2 nights. Leave Sunday morning. No hiking plans.
No drinking.
Just food, sleep, and time away from phones. There was no cell service at the campground, but that wasn't unusual. We expected to be mostly offline. When we arrived, there were about 6 other camps occupied. A family with kids near the lake. An older couple in an RV closer to the bathrooms. One site farther back had a single tent and a pickup truck parked beside it. I didn't see anyone there at the time. We picked a site near the middle of the grounds. It felt safer than being at the edge. We unloaded the car, set up the tent, and stacked firewood. Everything went smoothly. The park felt calm, quiet in a normal way. As it got darker, the atmosphere shifted the way it always does when daylight fades in the woods. Sounds carried farther. Shadows stretched between trees. The campground lights stayed on near the bathrooms, but our sight depended on the fire and our flashlights. We cooked simple food and sat across from each other at the picnic table. We talked about work, family, and plans for the fall. Nothing serious. Nothing tense. The fire crackled, and smoke drifted upward into the dark. By around 9 p.m., most of the other camps had gone quiet. I could see dim lights inside the RVs and tents, but no one was walking around. The road through the campground was empty. That was the setting before anything happened. Nothing scary yet. Nothing that clearly felt wrong. Just a quiet campground at night, two friends trying to relax, and a place that seemed ordinary on the surface. After the fire burned down to embers, we stayed sitting outside longer than we planned. The night felt still, and neither of us felt ready to crawl into the tent yet. The quiet wasn't loud or sudden. It was steady, like the campground was holding its breath. That was when I noticed the sounds were wrong.
There were no insects. No crickets. No buzzing.
Even the lake was quiet. I had camped enough to know that silence like that usually meant something had disturbed the area. I didn't say anything at first, because I didn't want to sound nervous. A few minutes later, I heard movement behind us. It came from the direction of the trees, just beyond the edge of our campsite.
Not fast. Not
Heavy. Just a soft shifting sound, like someone stepping carefully on dirt. I turned my head and listened. Mark stopped talking. The sound didn't repeat. It didn't move closer or farther away. It just stopped. I grabbed my flashlight and shined it toward the trees. The beam caught the trunks and low branches, but nothing else. No reflection from eyes. No movement. When I turned the light off, the darkness felt thicker than before. Mark asked what I heard. I told him it was probably someone walking back to their site. That explanation made sense. The campground wasn't empty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the sound had been too close. We started packing up the food. As I leaned over the cooler, I heard it again. One step.
slow.
Deliberate. This time from a different angle, closer to the side of the tent. My chest tightened. I looked up and listened. Nothing followed. No footsteps moving away. No voice. Just silence. I scanned the road.
No headlights.
No flashlights from other campers. The pickup truck at the far site was still parked, dark and quiet. I told myself that if someone was nearby, they would have spoken. Campers don't sneak around like that. But then I noticed something else. Our firewood pile had shifted. One of the logs that had been stacked neatly earlier was now on the ground, closer to the tree line. I was sure we hadn't moved it. Mark said maybe it fell. That could have been true, but the way it sat didn't look like it had rolled. We finished cleaning up faster after that. I kept looking over my shoulder. Every sound felt louder. Every shadow felt closer. As we zipped the tent shut, I felt a pressure in my chest I couldn't explain. It wasn't panic. It was awareness. Like my body knew something my mind hadn't accepted yet. Lying inside the tent, I listened to the night. That was when I heard breathing. Not loud. Not close enough to touch. But close enough to know it wasn't mine or Mark's.
Slow.
Controlled. Just outside the thin fabric. And whatever was out there wasn't moving away. I stayed completely still once I heard the breathing. I didn't even turn my head. I focused on keeping my own breath slow so it wouldn't give me away. Mark was lying beside me, facing the other direction. I could tell he was awake because his breathing had changed too. The sound outside the tent didn't move. It stayed in the same spot, close to where the zipper met the ground. Whoever it was knew where we were. I whispered Mark's name, very quietly. He didn't answer, but his hand tightened around his sleeping bag. That told me enough. A shadow passed over the side of the tent. It blocked out the faint moonlight for just a second, then moved away. The shape was tall.
Human. Upright.
It wasn't an animal. I heard a footstep press into the dirt.
Slow.
Careful. Like the person didn't want to make noise. Then another step. The sound circled the tent, stopping near the back. My heart was beating hard, but my mind felt strangely calm. I kept telling myself not to panic. Panic would make noise. The footsteps stopped. The breathing came back. This time closer to the back wall of the tent. I reached for my phone. No signal. Just a blank screen. The time read 2:14 a.m. I thought about yelling. About unzipping the tent and running. but I had no idea where the person was standing. I didn't know if they were alone, and I didn't know if they were armed. Then something brushed the tent wall. Light pressure, like fingers pressing against the fabric.
Testing it.
Mark shifted beside me, and the movement made the tent rustle. The pressure disappeared instantly. The person froze. We waited. Seconds felt like minutes. My ears rang from the silence. Then I heard the sound of metal. A faint clink, like something hard touching the tent pole. It happened once. Then again.
Slow.
Controlled. I knew then this wasn't someone lost or confused. This was someone who had been watching us. The zipper moved slightly. Not opening. Just enough to make the sound of teeth shifting. I grabbed Mark's arm and shook my head even though he couldn't see me. We stayed still. After a long moment, the footsteps moved away. Not fast. Not running. Just retreating back toward the trees. But the feeling didn't leave. I knew he hadn't gone far. He was waiting. And as I lay there in the dark, listening to the forest slowly come back to life, I realized how trapped we were. No service.
No lights.
No one else awake. Just a thin layer of fabric between us and someone who clearly didn't want to be seen. We stayed inside the tent for a long time after the footsteps faded. Neither of us spoke. I kept listening for movement, but the forest slowly returned to normal sounds. Leaves shifted. Something small moved in the brush. Still, I didn't believe the person had left the campground. Around 3 a.m., I heard it again. Footsteps. Faster this time. They came down the gravel road, not trying to hide anymore. I heard them stop near our sight. A shape blocked the moonlight again, this time closer to the front of the tent. Then the tent shook. Not hard enough to collapse it. Just enough to be intentional. Mark sat up, and before I could stop him, he yelled, "Who's there?" Silence followed. Thick and heavy. Then a voice answered.
Low. Calm. Too calm.
Just checking campsites. No ranger would be doing that at 3 a.m. And even if they were, they would identify themselves. I asked who he was. My voice shook more than I wanted it to. No response. Instead, I heard footsteps moving toward the cooler and the car. I heard our trunk handle lift. The sound of something being moved. That was when fear turned into urgency. I grabbed my keys and whispered to Mark that we were leaving.
Right now.
We counted silently.
3, 2, 1.
I unzipped the tent and bolted. The man was standing near the car, close enough that I could see him clearly for the first time. He was tall, wearing dark clothes, his face hidden by a hood. He turned toward us fast. I didn't wait. I hit the panic button on the key fob. The car alarm exploded into noise, cutting through the campground. Red lights flashed. The sound echoed through the trees. The man stepped back, then forward again. He raised his hand. There was something in it. Metal caught the light for just a second. I yanked the driver's door open and dove inside. Mark jumped into the passenger seat. I slammed the door and locked it just as the man reached the side of the car. He hit the window once. Hard. I started the engine and floored it, tires spinning on dirt. As we tore down the road, I saw him in the rearview mirror standing in the headlights, not chasing us. Just watching. We didn't stop until we reached the main road. Then we drove straight to the nearest town and called the police. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept seeing the way he stood there.
Calm.
Like he had all the time in the world. And the worst part was knowing that if we had waited even a few more seconds, we might not have made it out at all. We stayed in town for hours after the police arrived. Officers took our statements, drove us back to the campground, and looked around. Nothing moved. The fire was out, our tents were intact, and the car was fine except for a few scratches on the door from where he had hit it. That's when one of the officers mentioned something that made my stomach drop. Another group reported a man in the woods a few nights ago, he said. Hiding near the campsites. Watching people. They never got close enough to see a face, but he was carrying something, tools, knives. Maybe more. We didn't catch him that night. I froze. That meant the man had been in the area for more than just our trip. He had been waiting, watching, learning the campground. Then they told us something even worse. There was a backpack buried in the woods not far from our site. Rope. Duct tape. A large knife. Nothing illegal in itself, maybe, but the way it was hidden suggested someone was planning to use it. And no one had claimed it. I thought about the way he had moved the logs near our tent the first night. The slow, deliberate footsteps. The calm way he stood by our car. He hadn't been random. He had been scouting. Preparing. It hit me that he could have been at the campground for hours or even days before we arrived. We just hadn't noticed him. The officer searched for hours, but never found him. Not in the woods. Not on the road. Not anywhere near the campground. And then one of the rangers said something quietly, almost offhand. He's probably done this before. And he'll probably do it again. We don't know who he is. That line stuck with me. It explained the breathing outside the tent, the shadow moving across the wall, the intentional shaking. He wasn't a lost hiker. He wasn't someone making a mistake. He was waiting. And we were just unlucky enough to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. It changed everything. That quiet campground, which had seemed so normal, had been a hunting ground for him. And we had no idea how long he had been watching before we even set foot there. Even now, thinking back, I realize how close we were to something we can't fully understand. Something calculated. Something patient. And the scariest part? We don't know who he is or where he went after that night. We never went back to that campground. Not for a weekend, not for a day. Even driving past the area on the highway, I felt tense, scanning the tree line like I expected to see someone standing there. The police never found him. Not then, not in the weeks that followed. Reports from nearby campsites kept trickling in. Strange noises. Shadows moving between tents. Things missing from campsites. Nothing conclusive.
No arrests.
No description beyond tall man, dark clothes, hooded. Sometimes, when I'm alone at home or walking through a quiet parking lot, I get that same feeling. That weight on my back, that sense of being watched. It's subtle, but I notice it immediately. My hands tense. My chest tightens. And for a moment, I see the shadow again, tall and calm, just watching from the edges. I keep thinking about the first night, when we thought it was nothing. About the breathing outside the tent. The shadow passing across the wall. How he stood by our car, perfectly still, knowing we were trapped and helpless. I still don't know who he was. I still don't know if he is still out there, somewhere in the forests, waiting for the next unsuspecting campers. And I'm not sure I want to know. The campground is still open. Families still visit. Hikers still roam the trails. But I will never forget the feeling of being alone in the dark, knowing that someone was watching, someone patient, calculating, and completely undetected. And sometimes, late at night, I can't shake the thought that he's still out there. That if I had stayed even a few minutes longer in my tent, I might not have left at all. It's a reminder that the woods are never as empty as they seem, and that some dangers aren't obvious until it's too late. Even now, when I tell this story, I glance over my shoulder, just in case. Because the truth is, I still don't know if he's gone. We never went back to that campground. Not for a weekend, not for a day. Even driving past the area on the highway, I felt tense, scanning the tree line like I expected to see someone standing there. Every time I think about that night, my chest tightens and I feel that same sense of being watched, even in safe places far from the forest. The police never found him. Not then, not in the weeks that followed. Reports from nearby campsites kept trickling in. Strange noises in the woods, tents shaken in the middle of the night, things missing from campsites, shadows moving between trees, but nothing concrete.
No arrests.
No one ever confirmed a description beyond tall man, dark clothes, hooded. It was as if he could vanish completely when he wanted to. Sometimes, when I'm alone at home or walking through a quiet parking lot, I get that same feeling. That subtle weight on my back, the feeling that someone is just beyond my vision. My hands tense. My pulse races. And for a split second, I see it, the shadow, tall and still, watching from the edges. I catch myself freezing, heart hammering, only to realize it's just my mind replaying that night. but it feels real enough to remind me of how close we were. I keep thinking about the first night, when we thought the footsteps and breathing were nothing, about the shadow passing over the tent wall, about how he stood by our car, perfectly calm, knowing we were trapped and helpless. I think about the backpack they found later, rope, duct tape, a knife, and realize just how patient and prepared he was. How long had he been watching before we even arrived? How many other campers had he followed, studied, waited on, without them ever knowing? Even now, years later, the memory of his presence feels vivid. I can picture the exact way he moved, slow, deliberate, calculating. Every action measured to instill fear. And I can't stop wondering if he's still doing it somewhere else, in some other forest, watching, waiting for the next person unlucky enough to stumble into his path. The campground itself is still open. Families still visit. Hikers still roam the trails. But I will never forget what it feels like to be alone in the dark, with someone watching just beyond your reach. The terror isn't in what you see, it's in what you don't. The fact that the danger was so close, so real, and we had no idea until it was almost too late. And sometimes, late at night, I can't shake the thought that he's still out there. That if I had stayed even a few minutes longer in my tent, we might never have left. I still check the woods when I go camping. Every rustle, every snap of a twig, sends my mind spinning. It's a reminder that the woods are never as empty as they seem. That some dangers don't announce themselves. They wait, patiently, observing, calculating, silent until the moment they choose to act. Even now, when I tell this story, I glance over my shoulder. Even in my own backyard. Even when lights are on. Because the truth is, I still don't know if he's gone. And that's the scariest part. Some people survive encounters like this and move on. I haven't. Not really. Because the forest, the dark, the quiet, it still feels alive with him. Watching. Waiting. And I know, in my bones, that the next person who sets up a tent alone, under these trees, may not be so lucky. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear the soft crunch of footsteps outside my window. And I wonder if he ever left at all.